And next up, we will have a fireside chat with James Berdigans, the founder and CEO of Printify. And to chat with James, I would invite Andris Berzinj back on stage. So we have Andris.
James, welcome. So we're going to start with the question of why James is wearing a tie today. Because I can assure you when he met his co-founder Artis just about dropped dead seeing James in a tie.
Thank you for pointing it out. It's today is Printify's 7-year birthday. Woo! It's a very important day for us. 7 years. It's a lot has happened in your life at the age of 7. You have probably just graduated from the kindergarten. The big life of the first grade is ahead of you, so we are very excited.
Fantastic. Congratulations. It's a big milestone. So maybe we'll actually start with some background on Printify for those who don't know the company that well. Maybe you can give the very brief, what the company does, how big, the funding round last year, etc.
Happy to do that. Thank you for asking. So Printify, we are a platform that connects large-scale on-demand manufacturers all around the world, primarily in the United States, with tens of thousands of merchants on Shopify, Etsy, WooCommerce, Squarespace, and so on, that are selling those products for profit, and we help them to make their lives easier. Last year we raised $50 million from Index Ventures and a few other great investors, including Virgin, Richard Branson's investment arm, H&M, the clothing company. And the team is now over 600 people, and that does not include any of the production, as we do not produce anything ourselves. So that is the core team of product development, marketing, customer support, and so on, located across Europe.
Fantastic, thank you. And this is exactly what Freds was talking about on the previous panel, about the kind of companies that he wants to attract to Riga and to help grow here, because most of those people are based here in Riga. And we're also very happy as Change Ventures to have been able to join that round and invest. And so there are many topics we could cover with James. We have a very short time, so I wanted to pick a very specific one, which was in a role as CEO, you want someone who can advise you, because the CEO is in some sense the loneliest role in the company, because every one of those 599 people is looking at you for direction and vision and all sorts of things, and your investors on the other side are taking the whip out that you do more and more and more. And so wanted to pick on the topic of advisors and people that are helping you as a CEO decide what to do, when to do it, how to do it, why to do it, all of these questions. So maybe if you can tell a little bit about what kind of people are the advisors that you're talking to, trying to get help in figuring out how to run the business. How did you get them? You can start there.
I will start by saying I think building a startup is probably one of the most challenging things you can do in your life. I have a lot of respect for everyone who is building their own startup or is a part of a startup. It's a roller coaster and a ton of work. And for founders, my advice is not to shy away from using coaches, and also especially psychotherapists. Maybe there is in Latvia a bit of negative association with that, but it's absolutely fine, and it's an incredibly challenging experience to go through building your own company, a startup. And it's helpful to have a professional that can help you in those difficult situations. I had one myself when I was in San Francisco. And so do it. It's helpful. It's as Andrew said, it can be lonely sometimes, especially if you don't have a co-founder. I was lucky to have 2 co-founders. That was very helpful. And the other thing about the mentors or coaches, I and the Printify team have been very lucky from the very beginning that we had very high caliber investors. My personal mentor is a guy called Gokul Rajaram, who was part of the Google early team, building the Google AdSense tool, then leading Facebook advertising network, and incredibly smart, talented, positive person that has been helping me throughout this journey. And so that's my recommendation, is to, especially for the first money, do not optimize for the valuation, optimize for the people that you can get on your cap table. The value you will get out of really smart people in the long term will be much greater than the initial valuation that you could squeeze out.
So how do you go about finding these people? So not everyone has access to Gokul, but or rather, there's a reason you did. So maybe you can give some thoughts about how you go about finding these people.
I did not. The answer or my suggestion is just hustle. We were part of 500 Startups Accelerator in San Francisco. We went to 50 different investors and we got exactly 50 no. It was like, thank you very much, interesting, come back to us when you have more traction. And Gokul was one of them. I remember him saying, and an additional story, how he got to the Gokul. I never had met him. I didn't know him. I didn't even really know who he is. What we did, me and my co-founders, we went through the LinkedIn profiles of our mentors in the accelerator, looked at all the high caliber people or investors that they had, and banged on their door and asked, hey, can you please make an introduction to all those 20 people? And they would be, well, I can't do 20, but I can do 7 out of the list. So we became quite annoying over time, but we at least got the introductions. Introductions doesn't mean that you will get an investor closed, but our experience also with Gokul was that he considered investment, said, interesting, but you need a bigger investor. And we didn't get any investor back then. We borrowed money, we kept working hard. And a year later, when we had reached break even, we pinged Gokul and he was so impressed that we have reached break even with that little resources that he's like, all right, I will give you the first 100K investment. And if you do well, I will follow up with more. And that's what we did. And I recommend every one of you to really try every opportunity. You really don't know how it will turn out.
Okay, so hustle, and go back to those who heard Rolands from Nordigan earlier say brute force it, right? So work hard and brute force it. But so let's say you get someone who's a very useful advisor and mentor. How often do you call on them? Do you reschedule updates? How do you think about making sure you get the advice when you need it?
Especially if you get a very experienced or high caliber investor, remember that their time is the most valuable asset that they have. And usually they are very selective about where they invest their time. That has been my experience. And especially when, and it can be different. It can be different. For example, now that from the recent investors that have invested, they are more open to having regular meetings and check-ins and support. With other investors, the earlier investors, they were very selective and they prefer that when you have a real problem, come to us, often via email, and we will help you to provide our guidance, what we can recommend. And that is, in my experience, it has been incredibly helpful. Sometimes there are like these difficult decisions that you have to make, and you don't have anyone to ask. And if you can ask somebody who has done it 3 times or even more, it's really, really helpful to make the decision and feel good about the decision you are making.
Okay, and so so now you've got further down the journey. You have a whole bunch of people, not just Gokul, who you go to for advice. So how do you think about that? Is that like certain people at certain topics you would bring to certain advisors? How are you sort of thinking about not just one, but a bunch of people that you get involved?
Well, soon after, when you have the initial investors, you will understand who is best at which area, if it's product development, if it's engineering, if it's marketing. And so just use their skill sets and approach them appropriately on where they are the strongest.
Okay, cool. So I think, is Olga here? Do we have time for one question? Is Olga, we have time for one question. Does anyone want to pose one question to James while we have him here? There is a hand over there.
Hi, thanks for the discussion. It's really valuable, and I really admire James. You're doing a really great job. Maybe I missed that, but at the beginning you said about those 15 no's when you were in USA. Do you had the same idea about that you're doing now, or you pivoted that afterwards? Thanks.
Thank you for the kind words. You're too kind. I will say it's similar in every fundraising round. Realistically, you only need one good yes. Preferably, you have several ones so you can create competition and fear of missing out for the investors and get the price up. But it's relatively similar, and I would say that you have to have pretty big pool to pitch to people, because you never know who will be in the right situation, who has money, who has comfort with the industry that you are, who is excited about the direction industry that you are investing. So you need to approach pretty big pool, and that's what we also did in the last fundraising round. That we had a very solid list of investors that we approached.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I already grabbed the mic after the question. So is that a wrap? It's a wrap. So thank you so much, James, Andres. A round of applause.